Hello, welcome to my family room. All right, we are going to talk about some nitty-gritty things with your briefs. So please take a moment and grab this. Pause the video if you like. I will wait. Welcome back. All right, let's talk about some rules. Turn to page 8. That's really where the substantive requirements start. So you have to submit 5 hard copies. And then 1 electronic copy to the TA. I get a hard copy, your opponents get a hard copy, and the judges get the remaining 3. All right, 10 error rule, very important. So you can have no more than 10 technical or grammatical errors. That's not very many in the entire brief. You cannot have a single substantive error, meaning you can't get the law wrong, right? You can't say that Wardius held the opposite of what it held, right? I don't think anyone's in danger of making a substantive error, so I'm not hugely worried about that one. But technical and grammatical errors, oh heavens, most of you fail the 10 error rule in 1 page. So we're going to shore that up, aren't we? All right. Okay. Please look at page 10 for formatting. It tells you the binding that you required. So for California Supreme Court, so real parties, you will use the white cardstock. And providers, you will use the blue cardstock, right? Because functionally, that's who you are in this case. All right. The title page, you'll see that there's directions for the title page. This is, we do need to have a caption for your oral argument round and number. I will get you that information. But a lot of the formatting is for federal court, and we are using the state court formatting, and so it's slightly different than what you'll see written here. Okay, I might mock up a sample title page so that we all have it the same. Okay, all right. Please note, page limit. You can't have more than 40 pages, and that includes your statement of the case. It doesn't include the tables, so thank God, right? But it does include the statement of case and the summary of argument and the conclusion, right? Anything that's on a numbered page, right, on an Arabic number page, anything that's on a Roman numeral page doesn't count for the page limit, but anything on an Arabic number page does. So keep that in mind. A couple of you are pushing up on that limit. I think for everyone, I would expect your table of a statement of case, summary of argument, and conclusion to take up about 6 to 7 pages total, like for all those sections. And I would expect you to have about 20 to 25 pages of argument, fudging for style and different points made. I would expect everyone is going to wind up in the close to 30 range. Ish. So keep that in mind. If your argument, when you combine the 2 halves, is fewer than 20 pages, just take a look and make sure you're actually making enough argument. I don't think that either side has fewer than 10 pages of text to make a full argument. Okay. All right, that's that. Research techniques we don't need to discuss. You did it or you didn't. Okay, you'll notice that we are using Blue Book. So I believe that some TAs had told you before we were going to use the California manual, which in the real world these briefs would use because we're before the California Supreme Court. But we are using Blue Book in this class because Hastings Supreme Court, we use Blue Book. So do look at page 59. Or the section starting on page 59, it does list out the most common errors. So do take a look at that and make sure that you are thinking substantively about those issues. There's also some formatting issues, and many of you come up on them, and I'm trying to look quickly to find where that would be. I'm thinking specifically of issues regarding ellipses and such. Let's look at the table of contents. How to make the dots. Page 73. That might be there. How to make the dots. Okay, oh, the dots. Those are for the tables. Do look at that because the dots are a double. So on page 73, table of authorities and table of contents take an odd amount of time. You would think they would take no time, but they actually take quite a bit of time. Do not shortchange yourself on the time to check your page numbers, to check that your headings in the table of contents are exactly the same as the headings in your argument. They have to be identical, otherwise each one is an error. Each difference is an error. And do make sure you have those dots aligned, because for headings, all headings have a period because they are sentences. But then, so it would be period to the heading, space, then the dots. Just make sure they're each done correctly. If you're going to make an error, make that error consistently, because then it's counted as one. But if you foible and one is done correctly and one is done not correctly and one is done correctly, every time then becomes an error. So if you're going to err consistently. Ellipses. I am not seeing where we list out ellipses, but I know that we do. Here's the deal. The little dots. If you are not going to finish a quote, right, and you go dot, 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 it's dot, space, dot, space, dot. If you're ending a sentence, it's another space and another dot. Many of you are doing the dots without spaces, and that's wrong. Somewhere in this handbook it says that. Just be aware. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about in the handbook is the samples. So here's the deal. Style-wise, many of you are still struggling. Either, it's one of two issues usually. Either your language is a bit too neutral for an argument, or your style is a bit too professorial for an argument. Argument style is very straightforward. It is clear in the sense that at no point should the reader be in question as to your opinion about what the issue you're discussing, right? And it's straightforward in the sense that we are not going to meander through the annals of history unless that history is required to make a very distinct and succinct point. So, that being said, do take a look at the samples. So I will tell you, in the samples, this was last year's at-bad case. So one of the issues is a Fourth Amendment issue, and it's very fact-intensive, as all Fourth Amendment issues are. The second one is purely an issue of law. So you'll notice that one half of the brief is very fact-intensive, and then the second half is very law-intensive. Do look at both style. So we have the same situation in our brief, in the sense that the alternate means arguments are deeply fact-intensive, right? So you're going to want to mirror some of the style you're seeing in the Fourth Amendment argument, where you're seeing counsel deal with the facts there, versus, say, for example, wading through what the due process requires of us. We're now much more theoretical, at least in giving the underpinnings of the due process. So do take a look at the way counsel in the samples argues qualified immunity, because they're two very good examples of how to argumentatively wade through quite a bit of theory, right? All of you need to read your work out loud. I can't stress this enough. I will say, take a moment and step back. So I think if you haven't figured it out yet, you'll realize I am not a hide the ball professor. I don't have a reason to not give you an argument or a case citation. That's not my style. I know that there are many professors that is their style. It's just not mine, because I want you to understand your argument clearly, and I want you to focus on articulating the argument. So, knowing that I'm not a hide the ball professor, right? I have given you everything that I have thought of. Step back, look at the samples, right? Read your brief aloud. Are you clearly making the points you must make, right? Each argument requires certain components, and the components must come in order. And we've talked about all of them in class. So look at your notes. Think about just stepping back. How would you explain to a stranger who's a lawyer, by the way, how would you explain to a stranger who doesn't know the case why you win? The farther your brief gets from that basic understanding, the thicker in the weeds you are, right? I want you to be centered. The reason I bring up the samples is this. As we talked about in class, at the end of the day, as a lawyer, you are a writer. You're a communicator. You are a writer and you are a speaker, right? Good writers do two things. They write and they read, right? Reading samples is as important as writing on a regular basis. You need both in your toolbox so that you can both practice what you've seen and continually enhance the techniques that you have seen so that you can then go practice them. You need both. You can't just write and get there or just read and get there. Good writers write and they read. So do take a look at the samples. You want to look at the samples not just for style, but also for the way in which arguments are presented. Which cases did counsel decide they needed to do a mini brief for, and which cases did they feel could be dispensed of with a parenthetical or a short one-sentence fact-based holding, right? Learning to make those decisions, right? Getting the judgment to know which cases are which, it just comes with time. So you need to read good work, and you need to practice writing, right? So do look at the samples. All right, I'm sure I will have other thoughts for you, but I will leave it for here now. Thank you.